now because it's probably not your interest. We were a very small startup, started as an Agile company about 6 years ago, and now we are about 140 people spread between the US, Europe, and now we are opening an office in Singapore. So I wrote this book, Agile Coaching, and I wrote the book maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, so that's probably not how I do coaching anymore. And this picture, this is just to give you an illustration of the environment I'm working in. So hopefully you can see this is a software development environment. There are people pair programming, there are story cards on the wall, and there are people having stand-up meetings and discussions. This is the normal situation for an Agile team. So I've been there for 2 years, and normally people think about coaching as somebody who comes in at the beginning to help the Agile movement, the Agile transition start. So why am I still there 2 years later? And actually, in my own book, I say, you should be moving on and you shouldn't stay with the team. But I am staying with the team. And the way that I think about it is quite different. Sometimes I think that consultants, they go in to help sick patients, almost. You know, this project is sick, we need some help, please get us back on our feet again. But if you work with an Agile team, a really good Agile team, it's much more like being a fitness trainer. So we've got a fit team, we want to be the best, we want to do really well, and we want to be even better. So I'm really not focusing on a transition to Agile, I'm focusing on transition beyond Agile. So it's really getting into being the best teams we possibly can and making the best products we possibly can. And that really involves a lot of working with individuals. So before I talk a lot, I would like to get some idea about you here as to what kind of background you have. So I will ask a few questions, and if you think, yes, that's me, put your hand up. So is anyone in here, has anybody been a software developer, a programmer? Has anybody been here a manager? Okay. Anybody who is working as a coach? What about people who are testing software? What about people who are specifying what the software should do? And what about people who are very new to Agile? They're only really at the beginning of an Agile journey. A few people. And what about people who have been using Agile techniques for a while, or like really too long? Okay, all right. So I really like lots of things about Agile development, but that doesn't mean I think it's the only way to work. And actually, there are things we can learn when we look beyond Agile development. So coaching, the very basic thing about coaching is that you want to get the team producing better results to work more effectively. This means that there should be some change. If you're not making a change, then you're not doing anything. And then the other part is that most people don't like change. Has anybody tried to persuade somebody to do things differently? And is it an easy thing? It's not usually. Sometimes everybody's waiting to stop using Java and use Scala or something, but it's not always the case that people want to change. So one of the things that you have to do when you're coaching is to really get this balance right between doing new things and not overwhelming people. You don't want it to be too many new things all at once. And one thing that I see a lot with people who are new Scrum Masters, for example, is they want people to be doing everything right from the beginning. And actually it takes people a while to learn new ways of working, and things just take a little while. And I know when I work with a team and they're trying to do their first planning session, and they're all excited about how many user stories they might be able to deliver. Very often, the first delivery is much less than they were expecting. But that's okay. That's just their learning, and it's normal for you to not be brilliant at something the first time you try it. So as a coach, you try to get a balance between new things and not overwhelming and not putting too much pressure on people so that they've got too many new things to think about. So there are some classic ideas in management about how to encourage people to do new things, like bonuses, rewards, or punishments, like not getting the bonuses. So sometimes it's even not very exciting. It's not healthy food like this rabbit has. It's like giving them pizza. I don't know if people have a culture in this country of, oh, well, yeah, can you work the weekend and we'll buy you pizza? But it's not a good trade anyway. So I try not to be encouraging people with rewards. And instead, a very good source of ideas for how to inspire people is this book by Daniel Pink, which is called Drive. Is there anybody here who's read this book? Okay, I've read it as well. And it has these 3 things that he encourages people to think about when you want to try to improve people's motivation. He calls it motivation 2.0. But basically, autonomy. So the idea that the people involved have some choice. Mastery. So the people involved have some way of improving their skills. And the third thing is, and I always forget this one, the third thing is purpose, yes. And the purpose is, so you need to connect with a bigger purpose than finish this task and do the next task. It needs to connect with the world, with people. It needs to have an effect on the world. And so it's very important to try to help people to see the results of their work. So when I'm coaching teams, I'm very much focused on trying to look at these areas. So here's a picture of developers. Now, I don't know if these look like developers look like in Portugal. They're just kind of, they're not the snappiest dressers, and they're very interested in programming. And some of them will go to work and they'll be programming, and when they go home, they'll do more programming. This guy here, Stan, he's on holiday at the moment, but he's just learning more programming languages. He's not really going to go outside during his holiday. So how do you make a start? This is when you get involved with working with developers, and especially if you're not developing yourself, how do you engage with such a group? So one of the things, or the way I do it, is I just become, I don't know if do you have these sea creatures? Yes. In the UK, we call them limpets, and they are things that stick, and if you try to get them off a rock, you can't get them off the rock. And what I try to do as a coach is stick with the team and just be there in all of their work, be in their environment, be through all of their pains and troubles and good parts as well. And that this helps me to get a good sense of what are the pains for the team and what are the things the team enjoys and what are the frustrations of the team. This means, sadly, that I have to be on lots of email and go to lots of meetings. And because I coach 3 teams, I get 3 times as much email and 3 times as much meetings. So, but I don't go to everything. So I'm an optional person. I get to choose whether I go to the planning meeting. But sometimes I go to like 3 stand-ups or, 2 retrospectives in a day, and it's a lot of meetings. What I really am trying to do is to create a sense of self-awareness in the individuals and in the teams that I'm working with. One of the ways that I do this is through having lots of one-to-one meetings. So I'm not there leading any meetings. I'm not the person running the retrospective. I'm not the person running the stand-up. I'm not the person running the planning session or any other meeting. What I am there to do is to spend time talking to everyone who works in that environment. So I have these one-to-one coaching sessions, and I write notes in a notebook. That's one of my main tools. This is mostly because I talk to lots of people, and I write, and I have a lot of things to remember, so I just make notes. But it is also very useful to be able to turn a page, draw a picture, and try to explain something to somebody using a notebook. So this is my main tool. I also use spreadsheet to try and remember. And because I changed this slide on the way here on the plane, you can see that I was going to add a screenshot there, and I was going to put a more recent version of this in, which I haven't had time to do because I was eating lunch. But I need to know when I've seen everybody, because I have one-to-one meetings with 18 people every month. And actually, some of them are weekly meetings, and so it's a lot of meetings. And I lose track of, I think, when was the last time I talked to Jason? Or did I talk to Vicky recently? And so I use a spreadsheet for me to do that. One of my aims, really, is to try to reduce dependency. Now, I know that this is pictures of wine bottles. I didn't mean dependency on alcohol. But it might be an outcome. It might not be an outcome. But the reason I use this picture is because in lean thinking, we really look for bottlenecks. And bottlenecks happen around experts. And I don't want the team to be dependent on me as a coach for anything. I want them to be enabled to do all of the things themselves. And also, I want in our team to reduce dependencies on specialists. So that's one of the things that I'm working to do. This means that you have to try to encourage people to share the secret knowledge that they have. So part of coaching people is getting them to explain and share their knowledge with a wider team. That means they're not then the special person anymore. And some people don't like doing that. But it is important as a way to be able to enable everybody. As a coach, I want to be able to detach. For example, I'm supposed to be at work today, but I'm here in Portugal, and I'm able to do that because everything can run fine without me. And so one of the things, the benefits of being detached is being able to do that. Also, the more that you step away from a situation, you get a different perspective on that situation. So what I like to do is to try to practice not being in the middle of the game, but watching from the outside, and then, as a sports coach would do, be able to notice things about the play in the game. Now, there is a thing called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this is not Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is a hierarchy I made up myself. It doesn't come from any other proper source apart from my imagination. About the things that I think that are important to software development teams, to product development teams. And I will talk a little bit about some of these things. So, having a good environment to work in, being trusted to do the work, being able to have a team that you can rely on, connecting with value in the world, and producing work of good quality. I think these are all really important parts when you're trying to help people to be more engaged in their work. The cake on the top, I added later, and I added it because when I got back and showed this to one of the developers in our team, Alex, he said, "But what about cake?" And I said, "Oh yeah, of course, cake is really important to developers." So I've put the cake there because you can get too serious about things. And one of the things that can really help people is to not be too serious and to try to bring more humanity into how we work at work. This feels less like humanity, continuous delivery. Continuous delivery is really hard work. And the teams that I work with, we deliver features every day, and we have to work very closely with the business to do that, and we work very closely with our business to be able to support things and make very rapid changes. Most organisations are not in a position to be able to do continuous delivery. It really means that you have to have excellent practices around quality to be able to do this. So, how do we achieve this? Well, here's a picture of people collaborating. And what makes it easy for these people to collaborate is that the environment is set up in a way such that people can sit closely together. The screens are big, so people can see. We are allowed to stick things on the walls. Is anybody in a situation where they work in a place where they're not allowed to stick paper on the wall? Yeah, I've been in those places as well. It feels very difficult, but you can usually find a way around it. But this is an environment, and as a coach, one of the things that you can do is to try to improve the environment of the team. Not necessarily by you going around hammer and nails and making it better, but by helping the management to see that it is an important provision to make an agile working environment work. Also, coming back to the cakes, it is important to provide snacks and food. I don't mean just for the nutrition of the people who are there, but also because people gather around the snacks. This is a place for us to talk and relax and chat. And if you want to have teams that work well together, they have to feel comfortable talking to each other, and so this helps. And having fun helps. So we try to do a lot of social things together as a team. They're optional. Believe it or not, this picture here, this is the team taking a selfie of themselves because they just enjoy working there, and this is the kind of thing that they do. They are a happy team, and they're a happy team because they get to do social stuff together. We also have to make sure that we know and can connect with our stakeholders in the business. So we have a human resources department. They're called people and places rather than human resources. And I asked them for an organisational chart so that we could stick it on the wall. And they didn't have one to hand, but then it made us realise it would be nicer for us to create one of our own. So we printed off all the photographs of everybody, and we didn't put the names on. And we just used some thread to connect up who was working with who. And then we made it a competition within the group to put the names on so that people would actually start to realise who were the faces behind the email addresses that they were dealing with. So these are the people in San Francisco, New York, London, France, Sweden, Norway, and then Germany, and now Singapore. We have one person there so far. So again, it's trying to create this informality and engagement of the team. And that would be different than if I went and I printed an official organisation chart and I stuck it up on the wall. So it's trying to think about that difference. We also try to encourage the developers to actually sit with business teams. And so this is Benji. He doesn't always wear a hat like this. But we have this idea of people being called a lone ranger. When they're a lone ranger, they go and they sit with the business team. So he's trying to fix some problems with discrepancies in financial reporting. So he's sitting with the accounts team because they know about it, and then he can just turn to them and show them what he's doing and get a quick feedback on results. So that's quite important to connect people to the purpose of what they're doing. There is a huge amount of stuff that we do which is to try to help people improve their skills and have a learning environment where they can learn at work. So we have, who has been to a coding dojo? A few people, okay. A coding dojo is an environment where people learn together. So it's not like having a teacher at the front of the room, and everybody in the students, everybody learns together. So here are some people from our team, and they are working on something called a kata. A kata is a problem or a challenge, and the idea is that they pair program on this to learn a new thing. And I've put a picture at the side here. These are some of the different coding dojos we've had over the last year. We've been doing coding dojos for nearly a year now, and we do them during the day. They're not at lunchtime or after work. I managed to persuade my manager that they should be during work time because they were important. So we have them at 12 o'clock every week on a Wednesday. And here are some of the things that we've been looking at in our dojos. So we've been looking at the Go language, Objective-C, JavaScript promises, Sprite Kit, Scala, and functional JavaScript. So a whole bunch of stuff, and we've got all sorts of other exciting things lined up. And who runs these dojos? The team run the dojos. So you see there are different faces. Each person has prepared some sessions for the other developers to learn. And this is an important aspect of being in the team, is that you are expected to teach other people skills. Another thing that we do, which you may have heard about as Google 20% time. Who's heard about 20% time? Okay. So we implement 20% time, and we don't do it like Google do. Everybody has 1 day a week when they work on their own research and learning. They have to say, I want to do my gold card today, and then they go and work away. But it has to be something relevant to us working as a group. And the technology doesn't have to be something we're using. We could have somebody looking. In fact, one of the new people in our team, Blanca, she's looking at using a Raspberry Pi. And the reason she's doing that is because she wanted to learn Python, and we have a bunch of scripts written in Python. Now, you may wonder why I have this guy here with the Viking horns in the corner. The reason is because we, at the end of every week, have a catch-up where everybody wears the helmet and they have to explain what they did. We don't just do that for the 20% time. Each team also gives a roundup of what features they've been working on, because we have 3 different teams working on different products, working in the same area, and they often don't realize what the other teams are doing. So this is another way where the team talk to each other. And there's some beer and snacks at the same time. Another thing that we tried, and we often try experiments when it seems like there's an issue that would need resolving, but it's not something we keep doing forever when that issue has gone away. So about this time last year, we had 3 new people in our department. So we have Jason, Jarhead, and Aaron. And all of them didn't really have background because they were quite new in what they needed to know. So we decided to put together a training plan where every developer would teach a session to the new people in their lunchtime, and the management bought pizza for this session. But it meant that these people actually then really improved their skills. And one thing that I'm very delighted about, so this guy here, Aaron, he joined our team as a support guy, and after about the first 2 sessions, I think this was after doing the first hands-on practice with test-driven development, he said, I want to be a developer. I really, really want to be a developer. I don't want to be a support guy. I want to be a developer. And but he was he had a lot of learning to do to be able to do this. And so I've been coaching him over the past few months, and trying to help him figure out what does he need to learn to be a developer. And he has now applied for a job as a developer in the team, and he is going to join us as a developer now because he's been working so hard as a result of doing this, just this lunchtime sessions. They just lit kind of a flame in him that he thought, this is what I want to be doing. This job I'm doing now is not the right thing for me. And these are the moments when you're coaching teams, when you really feel this is making a difference to a person. So coaching is really trying to help individuals in a team discover what their potential is and find an opportunity to bring that to the organisation. Another thing that we do, which sounds like, it doesn't sound like learning, but it is learning, is we move people from team to team. So once upon a time, that company had just one big team and one ginormous product. And the meetings were very long and slow. And so what we decided to do was to break the product up and to bring in some interfaces, and we broke the teams up. But then what we found was that the people in this team didn't know what the people in this team were doing. So we started to introduce the idea that you could move a person could choose to move from one team to another. And we've implemented this idea so that every 3 months we ask everybody, who would like to move to a team? Do you want to stay in the team you're already in? Do you want to move? Which team do you want to move to? And then if people want to move, we try to arrange a swap. If everyone says we all want to move, it wouldn't work. So we have to be sensible and only move maybe 1 or 2 people at a time. But we at least have this idea that you can move to work on a different area of the product. This makes it more enjoyable for the developers because they're able to find out new problems to work on and new technology to work on. It's also beneficial for the product because the ideas that are the good ideas in one team are carried across to the good ideas in another team. So it's a way of knowledge sharing. I've put this note here because we've also tried to do some similar kind of, well, not quite similar. We have an exchange with another company so that we can take one of our developers and they can go and work with another company for a week, and then we can have one of their developers come and work with us for a week. So it is another way of doing knowledge sharing, and it benefits both companies. You have to make sure that you're not business competitors, and you do have to say, look, when you go over there, one of the things we're going to ask you to do is to not go and work there permanently. But apart from that, you are able. It is a thing that we've been able to do, and the developers have liked. It's part of what makes it enjoyable working at our company is this flexibility to have more opportunities to learn. So another thing about retrospect is and I mentioned this before, that a coach helps somebody to reflect, helps the individuals in the team to reflect, and also the team to reflect as a group. So retrospectives are a core part of how we work, how we do this. Every few weeks we have retrospectives. I try to coach the developers to run the retrospectives. And this is a picture of our team structure. But we ask people who are on another team to facilitate the retrospective of the other team. So no, you don't have the team lead of the same team does his own retrospective. So this guy doesn't do the retrospective for these guys. We have somebody from over here will do the retrospective for this group over here. Now, we have remote people in our team. So we have Amy and also another guy called Lewis who are in New York. We also have somebody in Hamburg. So sometimes our retrospectives have to involve people being on a hangout, but we still find ways to make it interactive and to use Post-it notes and to send photographs to people so that they can see what's going on. So it is possible to bring some interactivity to these sessions so that they don't feel boring. You probably can't see, but this person underneath the Post-it notes is Amy, and she's our product manager in New York. And it's traditional when we're having a meeting with Amy to put Post-it notes on her face in the screen. And then we send a picture of it to her. And then quite often, she will send us pictures back of things that are in her office too. So, and this is another retrospective where we've gone out of the office to do a retrospective so that we're trying to be in a different situation. Sometimes that can open up the mood in the group to discuss different things. So, just to illustrate, so that you can see that there are actually first of all, there are a lot of retrospectives, and you can see that there's lots of different names of people. And you can see also, if you could read these tiny letters, that I do facilitate some retrospectives. I'm the backup person for when nobody else wants to do it. So, as a coach, the things that I try not to be running meetings. I try not to be involved in the day-to-day activities, performing any tasks, like I'm not writing any stories, I'm not writing any code. I'm purely talking to the people in the team. But there are certain things that I'm able to help the team with. One of them is getting support from our management. Sometimes we need some budget to be able to do something. Sometimes we need to get some time to do something. And I'm there to try and explain to the managers why it would be a good idea and why it's worthwhile supporting. They usually say yes, anyway. Then I am also, and I don't know why I chose this picture. It's very difficult to think of a picture for memory. So I'm the person who remembers what happened last time, or what happened last year, or, what happened in another company who tried to do a similar thing. So I try and help people remember. Now, there is another technique that we use to help our team remember. Who has been in a retrospective where people can't remember what happened last week? I've certainly been in lots of retrospectives where people can't remember what happened yesterday. They're like, what did I do yesterday? Who's been in a stand-up meeting where that has happened, where people say, I can't remember what I did on Friday, which is I often. So we have our boards where people have their stand-up meeting around. We also, as well as the stories and cards that we're working on, we also have, each team has an area where they keep a timeline of what the key events of the iteration have been, the key events in the sprint. You can't read this writing, I'm sure, and often, even if you were there trying to read the board, you wouldn't be able to read the writing. But what the team does is every day at the stand-up meeting, they put a little bit of a note about interesting things that happened yesterday that we might want to talk about in the retrospective. I can't see anything that would be... No, I can't read what it says. But maybe I can read it on here. There are usually some interesting things, but no, I can't see it. Then another thing that I sometimes remind the team about is when they agree to do something in a retrospective and they say, yes, yes, from now on, we will do this. And then there's a weekend or a holiday, and then gradually people forget that we said we would do the thing. And so then I remind people about that. Now, I'm not saying, when I remind people, you said you would do this and now you're not doing it, in a way that is expecting them to do the thing. What I'm trying to do is to actually encourage them to think, does this working agreement make sense? Okay, so we have one team, and they struggle with appearing on time. Has anybody been in a team where they don't always arrive at work on time? And it's frustrating because each person in the team will say, well, if I come on time, I'll be the only one. So, it's like you can't win because you say, all right, well, if you come on time and then you don't like it because the others are not there, then they won't come in. It's difficult. So then you have to try to discuss with people and say, okay, so what do you want to do instead? You're making this work agreement and then not keeping it. Is there another way? So all I'm there to be is more like a conscience of saying, what is it you really want to do? Nobody's going to do it for you. If you think this is valuable, you either do it or you come up with a different way of doing it. So that's kind of how I approach coaching. And then, I know this won't sound like much, but sometimes an idea can be a bit boring and not very exciting. And I try to at least make the idea feel a little bit more fun or enjoyable or humane. So, this teddy bear here, he looks cute, doesn't he? Yeah? Who would not want to have a turn of this teddy bear? Well, so this teddy bear represents the person who has to check through the spreadsheet of new CVs and resumes that have come in and work out who else is going to do phone interviews for people who are joining our team. So it's not something everybody looks forward to. But what we did, through a retrospective, we discussed it with the team. We said, what shall we do? We want to get more developers. Our teams don't have enough developers at the moment. We want to be able to get some more in. But if we don't look at the applications, we won't get any developers. We have to do it. So we tried to work out a way where we could share it amongst the team. It needs to be done by the developers because we're assessing developer skills, whether these people are going to be appropriate to work in that team. So we came up with a plan, which was we would list everybody's name, and each person would be Ted for the day. And this is the list of phone questions that we have to ask people. And then we worked out what that person would have to do every day. And we even came up with some weekly stats for what that person would be doing. And then we started to track who was doing it. And this feels like kind of what could be quite a boring, official kind of process. But because we use the TED, it became more of a fun thing. You can see that somebody's drawn a little bow tie on the teddy and said they've written bow ties are cool next to it. I'm not sure if they are, but anyway. And somebody's even drawn the Viking helmet on the TED. So when I thought, the moment that I thought, this process is something the team owns, is when Jahed, who's one of our most junior software developers, and actually he was one of the guys who did the Tech Academy, when it was his turn to be the TED, he looked at the spreadsheet and he went, this structure is terrible. I'm going to refactor it and rearrange it, and I'm going to write some guidelines on the wiki and stuff. Nobody told him to do that. He wanted to make his life easier and the life of his teammates easier, and so he did this thing. So what I'm trying to say really is if you create an open process where people can engage with it, where they're able to change it themselves, people will actually use that opportunity to make things better for their team. And what coaching is really about is to create this kind of environment. Another thing that it's trying to make something that could be very tedious into something that's a little bit more fun, is in our team, we have to have some infrastructure for our development workstations. There's things like we don't have a big department who controls our developer workstation setup. There isn't anybody who's going to come and install something for you. But we don't want all of the workstations to be set up differently, because then what happens is people make code that works on their machine and doesn't work on other people's machines. So we want the workstations to have a similar setup, and there's a bunch of other things where we want to have good infrastructure. But we didn't want to create an infrastructure team and make it their problem. So what we decided to do was to have a squad of people. They're called the Borat Squad, after DevOps Borat. And they keep a list of all the things that are annoying and need to be sorted out. So they have this list in Trello. They also have a column which is called the abyss, which is all the things they know kind of are just too ginormous to ever get done. And we really need to break those down and do those as proper projects. So how do these cute kittens come into it? Because it says, at the top of this column it says, not yet prioritized, discuss in Cat Cup. So what the Cat Cup is all about is that we have a meeting which is called Cat Cup. And it was just because originally somebody misspelled ketchup, and it became a thing. So what I'm trying to say is some people would go, oh, I must correct the name of this meeting. And other people will say, no, it's actually something nice. Let's try and make our process more humane, more sociable, and people will feel it's more enjoyable and that they can change it, and it's not something that is owned by other people. So again, they're quite little things, but they create this sense of freedom. The other more tedious thing that I have to do is to try to, because we have 3 teams, and they all are coming up with ideas about, hey, let's do this, hey, let's do that. If you've got a bunch of stakeholders and business people who have to deal with all 3 teams, and they're all wanting to do wacky different stuff, it's kind of annoying for the stakeholders. So I have to try to make sure that we are being respectful for the stakeholders, not wasting their time, and make sure that we have things that are consistent. So you don't have one team estimating in points and another team estimating in bananas. In fact, we did try this. So we have a team which is called chutney and a team which is called marmalade, and they were estimating in oranges and apples. And basically, although it does explain their points are different, and we do get that, it still wasn't, it was pretty confusing for the stakeholders. And so what we ended up doing was saying, let's not do that anymore because people are getting confused. Let's try and find a way that it won't be confusing for people. So a very simple way that we do is things like we've tried to make sure that physical boards that are in the workspace match up with the electronic boards that we have that the stakeholders who might be in another country might look at, so that they just look the same. So you can look at one and look at another one and go, oh yeah, and we're not looking at different things entirely. And again, we're trying to make things more humane. This is the chutneys board, so it has a picture of chutney behind, and this is the marmalade team, so they have marmalade. So you can't tell the difference between chutney and marmalade very easily, but it does say chutney and marmalade on the 2 at the top. And I think, kind of coming towards the end of the talk now, as well as trying to remind people about the past and how, remember what happened when we did that, and remember what happened when we did that, and we don't want to get that problem again, I also try to encourage people to keep thinking about the future, because it's very easy to be stuck in this kind of, oh, let's build these things now, and we're not really getting to grips with, in a year's time, where do we want to go? What do we want our product to be? Really looking forward, trying to connect with what the product could be. And we don't do lots of long-range planning at all. We're very reactive, but because we work in a very fast-moving market, and it's hard to make long-range predictions. But we do get our developers involved in doing the product research, and every developer is working on a different strand of product research so that they're able to come up with ideas for new stories that our business people may not have even considered. So, last thing, and see, here's another place where I didn't get time to put the logo of the conference in. This is just an advice for coaches now. If you are a coach, it's also a good thing to get out of the building yourself, to go and see other companies, to go and visit other user groups, to come to conferences. So like I'm here now and not at work. But you can be a person who goes out into the world and brings new ideas back to the team. So that is also another function of a coach. Then lastly, and this is my main advice about change, Change is very difficult because most people don't want to change. And even if they do want to change, most people don't realize how long it takes them to change or how long it takes an organization to change. So change does happen. And if you look back at your last year or your last 10 years, you will realize loads of changes have happened in that period. Just they were quite slow. So don't be overambitious. Try to just go with the pace of change that fits with the people that you're working with, and not to push people to go too fast, because then they will back off and not want to be involved in changing things. So with that, I'm going to say thank you. My slides are not at this link. They will be. I'll put them there. But I haven't done it yet because I haven't connected to Wi-Fi here. So thank you very much. And I'll take some questions at the end. Thank you. There were some mics. But even while we get the mics, who has got a question? So there is some questions. So keep your hand up until you get a mic. Oh, and then keep your hand up again. Okay, yes.
Hi. So can you give you some insights about how do you balance consistency between teams and self-organization?
So yes, it is a tricky balance. So balancing, keeping things similar enough and allowing freedom to change things is a balance. And so sometimes somebody changes something on a team and you want the other teams to do it, or you think it would be a good idea. And other times, the team changes something, not realizing it then makes them inconsistent with the others. So the first thing I normally do is just discuss it with people and say, did you think about whether this is consistent and what our stakeholders will think? It mostly doesn't matter what internal practices of the team are. And that's where we want the most freedom. And things like what we call the column on the board we use in the meeting, fewer people really care about that except the stakeholders. So we try to keep it the same. So another question?
About the 20% time you talked about.
Yes.
Can you explain a bit more how you implement it and in practice how often it happens?
Okay, so the way we implement it, we actually call it gold cards. The person who founded our company and I used to work in another company before. We used to do a similar scheme in about 2000. The way we do it is that everybody knows they can take 1 day a week, all the developers. And they have to say at the stand-up, I want to take my gold card. And then if it works, so sometimes it's not a good day because somebody else is off sick or something like that. But I would say in terms of how often it happens, I say you would normally get at least 2 of 3 gold cards. Sometimes you don't get your third one because maybe it was inconvenient. But if you really wanted it, it would be supported. And also that sometimes the team leads are actually the people who don't take the gold card. And then what you find is the team will bring it up as a problem. So they have systems on their board to make sure that they're not reducing time spent on this. And we have one team that measures what percentage of time they spend on different activities, and they never really drop below 15% on gold cards.
Do you have any advice to how to coach teams that are, each developer is in a different place, a remote place?
So if each developer is in a different place, you can still have one-to-one meetings with that person. And I would encourage you to have video calls where you can see the person's face and talk to them and ask them what the challenges are, ask them how they're feeling about things. When I have one-to-one meetings with people in the teams that I work with, it's usually like 30 minutes, which is not a terribly long conversation. And it's optional. So each person can say, no, I don't want to have this meeting now. I try to make the meeting so that they can move it in the calendar. It's editable by both people. And so they meet at a time that suits them. Sometimes people like to meet before work, not in work. Sometimes people like to meet during lunchtime or during the day. It depends. But I think the same system could work with a dispersed team. I think the harder thing is trying to get the team that's a dispersed team to have retrospectives and things like that. There were some other questions? Nobody on this side of the room got to ask a question.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
One question about team rotation. The impact on team velocity. It is disregardable, or how should we balance that?
All right, so the impact on team velocity is there is an impact if you bring somebody who hasn't worked on that product before, which sometimes that happens. But it's not a massive impact because we do pair programming, and when you pair with somebody, it's not like they're totally useless. They know about TDD, they know about refactoring, and sometimes their insights can be really good because they're freshly looking at the code that nobody, they haven't been used to this design, and so they ask really good questions. But yeah, sometimes it might bring the velocity down a little bit. We don't worry about it too much. I think this should probably be the last question. Yeah, switch it on.
It wasn't clear to me whether your process is a Scrum or not, but irrespective of that, how much would you say your role overlaps with that of the Scrum Master?
Yeah, okay, yes, I was trying not to get into an Agile methodology debate. Yeah, we don't use Scrum, and we use extreme programming, and we use something that's a bit evolved of extreme programming, so it's not even strict extreme programming. And my role doesn't really overlap at all, I would say, with Scrum Master, because each team, if you think about a Scrum Master as being somebody who runs the stand-up meeting and who's there helping the team to focus on the right stories and is there to try and remove impediments, the team lead normally does those things. The team lead is a developer, but the team lead would do those things. And I might be looking, perhaps, and this is where there might be a little bit of overlap, a Scrum Master sometimes looks at organizational impediments, and I do look a little bit at those. But again, I would do that by working with the team lead, so it's kind of not quite... I don't think there's much overlap. So I guess we should wrap up because it's time for the next session. Thank you.